This project began the moment I came across this strikingly faceted mold. Its geometry was so sharp and precise that I knew I had to cast it in eco resin. The opaque solidity of the resin plaster will be exactly what makes those geometric lines pop. I have already measured out 3 scoops of powder using this container as a measuring unit. Now for 1 part of water. I stirred the mix until it was perfectly smooth and lump free and then slowly poured this fresh mix into the silicone mold. This was a complete departure from the resin diorama I cast recently in another geometric pen holder mold. This time I wanted the focus to be entirely on the geometry. To ensure a clean finish, I cast the piece in multiple stages. This allows me to tap out air bubbles halfway through without the mess of an overflow. I work quickly to ensure the layers won't dry out between pours. This promotes better bonding and eliminates visible seam lines, which are often hotspots for bubbles that might otherwise mar the geometry. It is also vital to pour while the previous layer is still fluid. If it begins to set, tapping the mold becomes risky, as the semi-solid mass can shift and cause drips that would definitely ruin the precision of this beautiful piece. The cast has cured and I think it is already looking fabulous. I can't wait to see how it looks. Let's get this out of the mold. The moment I demolded it, I realized that I'd made the right choice. This design doesn't need additional color or texture. The play of light and shadow across the facets was all it needed to shine. The material gives the piece a lovely weight and a porcelain smooth finish that feels incredibly premium to the touch. This was when I decided to transform it into a lamp base. This had to become part of a table lamp. The process was straightforward. I marked the center of the base to drill a hole for the wiring. After making sure the opening was adequate, I sanded the base for a clean, flush finish. The foundation is now ready and needs to dry out completely before the electronics go in. All it needs now is the perfect lampshade. For the lampshade itself, I found the perfect form in a simple yogurt container. I traced the shape onto a baking sheet to create a template, allowing me to build the backing in sections using heat-resistant tape. This would have definitely been easier with wider tape, but we'll make it work with what we have. With the backing tape securely in place around the form, we are now ready to build our lampshade. I am outlining the design with this black resin to achieve an authentic leaded look that we associate with stained glass. I will start by creating guiding outlines using the existing form as a reference. This has to be done in small sections, as the resin is ready to run the moment it is applied on the tape. While I need to maintain the overall thickness of the resin, I'm fine with it being a little blobby or thinner at certain spots. It will certainly add to the organic, handcrafted feel I'm going for. The rest of the design will now be built within these two boundaries. I'm aiming for a continuous design without a visible seam, so I'm working directly on the pot. I've chosen to create a web of irregular 5-sided polygons because I find they offer a much better aesthetic for this look, allowing for a far more organic flow compared to the gritty feel of 4 sides or the honeycomb look of hexagons. Because the surface is curved, I'm working in very small sections, tracing a few lines and immediately curing them with a UV torch to prevent the resin from sliding. This faux leather skeleton is the heart of the stained glass look I'm creating. Next, let's bring in the colors. I am starting with some red alcohol ink mixed into clear UV resin. This gorgeous color mix is translucent, allowing the light to pass through. This not only enables us to use UV resin which can be cured in place, but it also creates a crucial visual effect. In combination with the black borders, this transparency is exactly what produces that authentic stained glass vibe. I did run into a bit of trouble with one cell. A giant bubble formed while I was curing, so I had to go back and redo that section. Thankfully, I caught it while the resin was still soft. Had it fully hardened, it would have been incredibly difficult to intervene without damaging the existing skeleton. With these two colors filling the cells, it's getting more and more exciting to see the whole piece come together. I am mixing in small quantities because I want to be precise. After the very first cell, it became apparent that this part of the project is going to take a lot of time. There is simply no way to speed up this process. Each cell must be filled carefully to ensure there is no dripping. I can't allow the layer to settle either, as the resin tends to pool towards the sides, causing the middle of the cell to thin out. This means every section has to be cured immediately. Even though it's incredibly time consuming, this is a labor of love. And looking at these interim results, I am certain the final product will be well worth the wait. To add a little more interest to this warm color palette, I am also incorporating some brown. While it looks dark here, it acts as a vital earthy anchor for the design. Once the backing is removed and the bulb is switched on, it will provide a beautiful visual texture that balances the more vibrant tones. We are almost halfway through now, and the fills are starting to look rather interesting. The piece is slowly being filled with other warmer shades that are sympathetic to this color scheme. We are almost there. I'm now going to fill any gaps and recoat every section to give the color the richness they need. The stained glass coloring is complete. It's finally time to take off the form. The bottom of the lamp needs to be evened out. Luckily, this container has a bit of a profile here, which is perfect because I can just fill this gap with black UV resin and give the entire shade a defined bottom. I will let the top retain its soft undulating border. we need a way to connect the shade to the lamp base. Since the lampshade is a truncated cone and doesn't match commonly available hardware, I need to build a custom fitter. I'm using this circular mold as a size guide and a silicone bottle cap as a spacer to cast a clear UV resin ring. Once cured, this becomes the frame for marking out the position for the spider arms. I'll then cut grooves into the ring along those markings, wide enough to fit these bamboo skewers, which will connect the rim of the lampshade to this fitter ring. While gluing the skewers into place with UV resin, I realized my workmanship is a bit askew. But since the lampshade design is so organic, it wouldn't hurt the final aesthetic. Let's trim off this extra length and make it manageable because now we are going to attach this bespoke ring fitter to the stained glass lampshade. My handcrafted shade now has a perfectly straight bottom edge where the fitter will attach. I want the bamboo skewers to sit flush with this rim, so I need to cut grooves into it. Because these are handmade pieces, I couldn't rely on perfect math. I marked the lampshade rim based on the actual position of the arms on my custom fitter and made little grooves along the edge where the skewers would lock in to ensure a snug fit. While checking if everything was fitting properly, I realized one of the holes was made in the wrong place. Luckily, since it's in the rim and not the colored glass, it will completely disappear once I give the lampshade rim its final coat. That's the beauty of working with resin. You can always go back and fix those little structural hiccups. I put this back on the form to repair the lip, but because I had removed the backing, some of the tape got stuck to the form. After one last visual check to ensure everything fits properly, I'm marking one of the arms for orientation. I just need to be certain I don't place it incorrectly as UV resin sets incredibly fast. Let's add a final top coat to finish the fitter component. This will provide extra strength to the skewer joints, which is crucial since they'll be supporting the weight of the lampshade, even if it is remarkably light. Assembly is where everything finally clicks. I will glue the skewers in place with UV resin. The fit seems sturdy. Now for some final touches. I removed the pieces jutting out and sanded them down to be level with the shade and gave that bottom rim one final coat of black UV resin for a clean professional edge. I actually love that you can see the wooden skewers through the resin. It's an honest nod to the construction of the piece. It's a bit of a MacGyver solution, but it's incredibly effective for grabbing the shade and hold it perfectly in place. If the piece wasn't looking awesome already, removing the heat-resistant tape, it's revealing its brilliant translucency. The play of light is just wonderful. There is a bit of tape trapped between the layers here, but I'm looking at it as an homage to the process. With the lampshade ready, let's complete the base. If I just mount the lampshade on the pencil holder, it's likely to topple over easily, so I'm going to create a foot for the lamp. Something which will not only hold the faceted lamp stem in place, but also balance this top-heavy lamp visually. This foam footprint of the lamp stem will create a neat little detail for combining these two parts of the base, as you will see a little later in the video. For this tray, I am using a casting powder that is slightly different from the resin plaster I used for the pencil holder. This version is mixed by weight. There is no complex reason for the switch. I simply ran out of the original plaster. Inspiration for the lampshade design hit a couple of months after casting the faceted base. There is one snag though. This powder is whiter than the resin plaster, but I have a trick up my sleeve to rectify this mismatch. I am adding a touch of pigment to the mix because the original plaster was, well, a bit plastery. This will help to mellow the whiteness and allow me to match this new casting perfectly to the faceted stem. I'll be casting this in multiple parts. While most trays are cast and then flipped so that the lip faces upwards, in this case the casting will remain true to its orientation. The lip will stay at the bottom, creating a hollow space for the wire coming from the stem to bend comfortably without stressing the internal wiring. This space will also be incredibly useful for housing any extra length of wire once the assembly is complete. We'll let this layer set but not completely dry out before casting the next layer. Meanwhile, let's add another layer to this starry space maker, as I think it needs a little bit more thickness for the technique I have in mind to be effective. This next layer will feature a subtle marble effect using reds, oranges and yellows to echo the colors of the lampshade. This adds just a touch of visual interest without drawing too much attention away from the main stained glass piece. Besides, colors tend to get muted in eco resin anyway, so I'm not too worried about the marbling being too stark. The final layer is also where I'll use the faceted footprint to create a negative relief on the top of the tray. I watched the eco-resin splash off this piece the best I could, but a little color managed to hang on to this porous surface. The tray has set, so let's take out the faceted footprint spacemaker. After sanding the top to get a smooth finish and correcting any overflow, the base tray will be ready for assembly. There are just a few more details to level and smoothen out the top. It is time to put everything together. Check out this sweet detail of the faceted stem clicking into the base tray. This not only hides the base joint, but also keeps the tray centered. Now I need to make an opening for the wire to pass through this tray. I'm going to use this outline to create an opening. It doesn't have to be perfect because it will be hidden, but it would be great if it was. Mine is certainly not straight, but it is just enough to let the wire pass through smoothly. I have made it off-center in the direction of the bending wire so that the bend of the wire is easier. Now this fellow is a little wobbly, But I really don't want to permanently stick this socket into this eco resin cavity, so I will be using these tacks. It's unconventional, but it works. There is enough space around the sockets for air movement in case there are any heating issues. Finally, the moment of truth. When you switch it on, all that work, the trace and cure process, the strategic color placement, the retrofitted vase, it all comes together. The translucency is beautiful. And look at the throw of colors through the lampshade. It even catches and refracts sunlight. Thank you so much for joining me on this build. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.